Hello everybody, Garage Heathen here. Once again, I've disappeared for a while. Right now I have a short pause in my university studies, so I was able to work extra hard on Dystopian Debugger. Apart from more direct advancements, I have also figured out a lot of stuff about the gameplay. For instance, pacing. Pacing is obviously very important, especially in puzzle games. I have to come up with a way to keep you guys engaged without making it too easy or too hard, and of course, I have to avoid the worst thing ever, the game being boring. So, the main way I can control that is through puzzle composition. As you know, you have to solve a number of puzzles each day, and if I can provide you with a sequence of puzzles that grows in difficulty at a certain pace, I can make the game interesting. Sprinkle it with some high-risk, high-reward challenges, like the bounty puzzles, which I'll come back to, a quasi-boss at the end of each day, and the experience becomes even better. So here's in detail how I envision the ideal difficulty curve for every day. First, we introduce some new concept, be it a new language or a twist on some familiar mechanic. These puzzles will not be very hard, but they should teach you something new. After that, we have a batch of regular puzzles, usually featuring the mechanics that were just introduced. Again, there's also difficulty tiers here. I've made it so that when you solve an easier puzzle, there's a higher chance of getting a more advanced puzzle next. For this, I've used a standard weighted RNG algorithm. It basically chooses between 3 pools of puzzles: easy, normal, and hard. But what's that? These spikes are so-called bounty puzzles, extra hard ones, which pay a lot more than your regular puzzle. As I said before, this is high risk, high reward, as there's a chance you'll just waste a lot of time on it, so sometimes it might be wiser just to skip it. And finally, at the end of the day, there's a special puzzle, a boss, which also pays more than the average, but is more challenging too. The bosses may vary in why they're more difficult. It can be a new concept, a new type of robot, or just something with a lot of moving parts you'd have to keep track of. So, with the help of playtesting, I'm hoping that this system will help with the engagement. Aside from that, I've also made progress in new puzzles, robot jobs, and ideas for them. Right now I have a handful of puzzles ready for the Trash Burner bot, the Spa bot and its Masseur variant, the Insect Exterminator bot, and the Car Assembler bot. And then there's several for the Turtle language, but there's just the Elect version robot job. Going to less gameplay affecting aspects, I've also implemented a dialogue system based on Inca language and completed a tutorial with this. This still needs tweaking, but it should be available in the playtest. A rather big change is that I believe I found the art style for the visual novel parts that I'd like to stick to. It's going to be a mix of low-key photorealistic gritty materials combined with clean traditional pixel art, like this Tilda sprite. You see, I've always been fond of art styles that do that. I love early Gorillas, as well as Blame and Dorohedoro actually, just because of that. There's something fascinating in such a contrast. Also, considering the already existing style of the 3D environment, I think the two will have a nice stylistic connection this way. As for the 3D assets, among other things, I've tried using Blender's Dream Textures add-on, and it's kinda insane. A background asset that took me up to several hours can now be done in minutes, and the whole process reduced to depth generating a suitable texture and fixing up the weird parts and making it consistent with the main pixelated style. I think this method is pretty good for background assets in this particular style, but for important stuff that the player will be looking at constantly, I'm still using the old method of texture sheet projection and regular texture painting. The interfaces have also undergone a change. Learn from my mistakes and design for the resolution your game will be in, as I would mostly experience the game through a small editor window. When viewed on a full screen, everything was just too big. So I scaled stuff down, repositioned it, and then realized how bland and lacking in detail everything was. So I kind of fixed that up. The current iteration of both interfaces has a much more detailed look, with turtle backgrounds changing depending on the time of day, for example. Oh yeah, and I also added some animations and screen shake and particles, so it's, you know, bearable to look at. A seemingly small gameplay change for the turtle language. Now the turtle can't step on the colored wires, which has made the whole thing way more puzzle-like. The mechanics for Turtle will include much more stuff than you see on the screen now, but robo-language is the main priority right now. Finally, I got really tired of fighting the Unity UI system as I was designing the manual, so I thought, Why the hell am I using Unity UI for this? As part of my architectural practice, I had to work with InDesign, so I just switched to it and exported the books as simple PNGs, then made a new version of Manual Provider class, so I could swap the in-game UI version with the PNG version effortlessly. Now these are also bearable to look at, and much easier to use and make. And InDesign can automate the table of contents for you and page numbers, which is also great. So what's next? When will you be able to see all that? I was planning to release a playtest version at the end of January, but it seems it will be postponed as some stuff still needs to be added and fixed. Right now, I'm planning for the playtest version to include 3 days of gameplay, each with the structure I described earlier. The playtest build won't feature any story, as this is not really the focus. Its focus is the puzzles. So there will be only 2 languages available, Robo and Turtle probably, and no Neuralink puzzles, because those are mostly tied to the narrative. Since this is once again a huge leap from stuff I've done previously, I want to be sure that it's interesting. For that, I'll be gathering all sorts of diagnostics from the playtesters, if they choose that option in the menu. The data includes stuff like puzzle start and end time, difference indices for how long players have read the manuals, and so on. The full list will be available before you begin playing. I've also implemented an option to send a more detailed feedback via Google Forms. You can press this huge button and write what you dislike or like about the puzzle. And finally, I'm using R language to see and compare metrics. These will help me to tune the puzzle's difficulty. For example, I can take data for a particular puzzle, filter it by people who selected high programming proficiency at the start of the game, and then calculate the mean time of completion. A default time constraint for that puzzle should probably be somewhere close to this value for that particular difficulty level. Hopefully, the build will be out sometime soon. As I've said before, I'll also be using Steam's playtest feature, so we'll see how that goes. The playtesters will also get a cosmetic reward in the complete game as an additional motivation. So, thank you very much for watching. Today is the last day of our winter break, so I might disappear for a while once again, but still, stick around for more devlogs, and see you next one. Bye.